Hi, and welcome to our series of audio blogs on the learner experience. I'm David Wentworth, the Principal Learning Analyst here at Brennan Hall Group, and I'm joined by Carl Chrysostomo, who's the Product Manager for Content at Saba Software. And in this series of audio blogs, we're going to dig in a little bit into the learner experience, what it's all about, and what it means for the organization. So the first question I have for you, Carl, is I was curious to know, in your thoughts, everyone's talking about this modern learning experience. Why does it matter? Why does an organization actually need to think about this? What does the modern learning experience mean, and why is it beneficial to an organization?
Well, great. Well, firstly, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, I think for a long time now, probably say about a decade, the corporate learning experience has not really changed that much. The way we deliver learning, the way we kind of measure learning, and also the technology we use to support learning has not really changed. And though, if we look at the world around us, a lot is changing. That's mainly driven by digital, and this change is happening in both our business and personal lives. So, looking at a kind of modern learning experience, I think it's a little bit about playing catch up and delivering something that's more akin to what we interact with in other parts of our lives. And why that's important? Well, I think firstly, it's all about the big E word, engagement. If you don't create an experience that's engaging and personal, then you won't capture your audience. And why is that important? Well, we're back to this thing of digital. Digital is forcing businesses to change, and some are changing pretty dramatically. I speak to companies who are pivoting their businesses in such a way they're going to be unrecognizable from, say, 5 years ago. So this change requires a lot of people to learn a lot of new skills.
And I also think that this is one of these times when the generational questions seem to arise, and whether there is some disparity between the different generations in the workforce. And typically when we've talked about sort of technological changes, one of the pushbacks we hear from organizations is, we've got, an older skewed workforce. It's hard to push these changes through. People are hesitant. But I think in terms of what we're discussing with this modern learning experience and the way people interact with technology, it's actually the other way around, in that the organizations seem to be slow to respond to what everyone wants. It's not just millennials that are after this stuff. Everyone sort of is now accustomed to the way technology works in their personal lives, and they're sort of expecting to see that now when they're at work, and the technology and the interactions that they have there in their journey to find information, right? That's really what this is all about. And I think the only real difference between the generations in this case is that when we talk about the millennials, who are now, in the US at least, the biggest section of the workforce, they don't know that things work any differently than this, right? They don't have this background of, well, we used to do it this way and now we want to do it this way. This is how things have always worked for them, and they expect that now from the organizations they work in.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's sometimes the generational thing is sometimes used as an excuse to not do something, and right. and I really think that, if you look at what we can take millennials, but I think everyone is looking from an experience. I think that they're looking for things that an experience is a kind of modern learning experience is a lot more personal and a lot more relevant. And I think this is key. I think this is one thing that we've probably not done very well from an L&D perspective in the past.
Right. And I think what's also important to think about is it's not that we're simply talking about engagement in terms of, making sure people enjoy the learning, right? Or that it's fun. I think, that's what people start to think about when they really focus on the experience. They start to think of that user experience. Are the colors right? Is everything in the right place? But this is much, much bigger than that. This is actually about performance and outcomes, right? This is not about simply making things be easier to use. You're actually in the pursuit of outcomes, both individual performance outcomes as well as business outcomes. And what we've seen in our research and others is that when you are able to deliver this type of modern learning experience, it has an impact on those outcomes. You're much more able to directly tie the learning you're delivering to those outcomes. You're able to put the learning into the flow of work so that it's right there at the point of need. And it's also able to create more agile and flexible learning environments that are able to adjust with the needs of the business as those continue to change more rapidly. And frankly, learning hasn't been able to keep up with those type of changes the way it's been delivered in the past.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, and it should start with the strategy. The strategy is your beginning point. You need to ask yourself, why do I need a modern learning experience, and what outcomes do I want to achieve? And I think by really only reflecting on the why of the learning need, can we kind of fully explore how we can deliver the most beneficial learning experiences. And we need to create experiences that are driven by the individual, team, and organizational goals. That's really, really important.
And I think one of the last bits for me on the why around this type of experience, I think in the past and in more traditional environments, the one real key element missing from learning is the what's in it for me factor, where and it's not really a selfish thing for people to think that way, in that you're presenting me with this opportunity, with these learning engagements. What's in it for me? And in the past, I think learning has just assumed that by creating these programs and delivering them, the what's in it for me is implicit, right? I've given you this, so clearly it's important and it's meaningful to you. So you don't need to ask and you don't need to know why, just do it. And this new modern experience, and you mentioned the personalization and the contextualization piece, really starting to frame the learning in, look, here's why this is important not only to you and your personal goals and your development, your growth. Here's why it's important to your team. Here's why it's important to the organization. Here are the goals and outcomes that we expect you to achieve by engaging in this learning. And by making those kind of connections, you've now started with engagement from the get-go, right? Somebody's already engaged, even perhaps before they've begun to take the learning, because now they understand why it's being presented. And then you're far more likely to achieve the outcomes because you've got that buy-in. And that's what this type of modern learning environment is able to create, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all course or putting everybody in a classroom. You're giving them this, look, here's why this matters. I mean, if we were assigning someone a project to do, we would obviously want them to know the purpose behind the project, what the outcome is expected of the project, the timelines. So I don't know why we treat learning as something different than that.
Yeah, I think learners have a right to be selfish, and I think that's fair. You talked about what's in it for them. It needs to be relevant. They're sitting there thinking, how's this going to support what the business wants me to do? How can it help me in my next career step? How can it, help me achieve what, say, my mentor and coach are discussing? And I'd say even how it can have an impact on their personal life. So we need to appeal to this. An experience needs to be able to at least tick one of those boxes, because without that, you're gonna lose your learner.
So this has been a great quick little discussion about the why behind the learning experience. I encourage everyone to check out some of the other audio blogs in this series on learner experience, where we delve into things like what goes into a good learning experience and how do you actually implement one, and also a little bit into measurement. So please join Carl and I for other audio blogs on the learner experience. Thanks.